And welcome to the live stream, folks. We got tons of stuff to cover. So thanks for tuning in. Please tell your friends and foes to join the live stream. We're gonna give you 1 minute of lead time here. So in the meantime, check out this filamentary dance on the southwestern limb of the sun in 304 angstroms. Again, 1 minute of lead time. We'll be right back. All right, tons of stuff to cover. We're going to talk some major cosmology stuff, galactic scale and beyond. Excuse me. Also going to talk big tech, censorship, and congressional investigations of them. But first, we're going to look at 171 angstroms view also. See what's going on with the filaments there. See some serious magnetic looping going on there, but no coronal mass ejections. Also, we see 0 sunspots, 10.7 centimeter radio flux, still at 67 solar flux units. Solar activity not as low as it was yesterday. We see a slightly higher solar wind. And let's also look at 193 angstroms for the coronal hole watch. I would note that the North Pole coronal hole, by the way, this is 9 hours of solar activity, folks. That North Pole coronal hole is large. It has, in the last month or two, increased in size, while the South Pole coronal hole shrunk. Also, we see a coronal hole rotating into the Earth-facing view underneath my pointer here. So that'll be an uptick in earthquake risk as a result of that. Let's look at some more data. But first, let's look at the locations of items in our solar system. Here's where they are now. Here's where they'll be in 1 week. We're almost at a Venus opposition. We're going to see it on the SOHO Core 2. Not to let down our viewers. We're going to look at stereo A. And for those of you not aware, stereo A is located out here, behind the Earth orbitally, but ahead of the Earth in terms of seeing solar activity kick off. Anyway, here's a view from stereo A. And we see no Earth-facing anything, but a lot of activity on the non-Earth-facing side, noted here on the left of your screen. And let's move on to even more stuff, such as the real-time solar wind. Now we are waiting on 180-degree phi angle or something around there, as that coronal hole gets closer and closer to the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. We see an uptick in solar wind density from yesterday up to 2.69 protons per cubic centimeter. Still very low, but not nearly as exceedingly low as it was yesterday. Also, solar wind speed recently ramped up a little bit, once again to 440 kilometers per second. We're also going to look at magnetosphere movies, first the density, and also the pressure. This will be 4 hours of data courtesy University of Michigan Geospace Model V1.5. So there's the density. We see a more nominal density here, although we do see some striations there. Again, this is 4 hours of data courtesy University of Michigan Geospace Model. We try to archive 4 hours of data every day on these videos, At least we'll have some indication of what the magnetosphere was doing. This is the pressure again. High pressure denoted navy blue, low pressure denoted in white. Here's the pressure. Again, that's density, that's pressure. We'll let that play through one more time. And thanks for taking the time to leave comments, folks. We do appreciate it. Let's just hope our channel doesn't get deleted. And I guess the likelihood of that is slowly falling. So thank goodness for some progress in terms of things like tech censorship. And don't worry about what's going on back here behind the magnetotail, folks, because Nibiru and Planet X are not there, because people with backyard telescopes would see them. Let's look at geospace magnetic perturbations a little closer to home. That is, changes in the B field of the planet Earth. As we see, the main perturbations here, as usual, are over the Canadian North Pole, not the Siberian one. And if you weren't aware, there are two. Also, we see evidence of the South Pole creeping into the Indian Ocean, as is well known by current pole flip, pole reversal, geomagnetic pole excursion enthusiasts. Here's what's going on above my head. And I think this needs a refresh, as we're like an hour behind. Yeah, I spent about an hour doing show prep today, folks. And YouTube will be paying us exactly nothing for that. So please send an email to YouTube about the ads that you're seeing and ask YouTube why it is that you get to see ads for our, quote, monetized, end quote, channel, yet we don't get paid for it. Anyway, here's the moon setting. So if you look out in the west and you're on the east coast of the US, for instance, you may see the moon setting on the ecliptic. As Venus rises, the sun's going to be right behind it. So if you've got a low horizon, take a telescope view of Venus and photograph it. We'll feature it on the channel. Let's look at the largest citizen science project in the world and do a little bit of citizen science work. Galaxy Zoo on zooniverse.org. We need human beings to classify galaxies. So this is a very odd galaxy, extremely oddly shaped, completely oblong. It has a bit of an egg-shaped nature to it. So we're just going to go through. It's not an edge-on disk. I don't see a bar. It's a very irregularly shaped galaxy there. There's no spiral arm pattern visible. I'm going to say there is a large bulge, as this galaxy is dominated by a bulge. And it's probably something like billions of light years away. Again, we need human beings to help classify these deep field images. So please do so at zooniverse.org. I think we're probably down to about 6.5 million galaxies that need to be classified. We're about 80% complete with this project. Is it merging or disturbed? I don't really see another object there. Keep in mind, when you classify these things, you only want to get the object in the middle. If there's nothing directly interacting with it, don't include that in your classification. I clearly see a lens or arc. It's 100% irregular. Big time dust lane. I don't see any overlap here. I'm just going to say something else. No, I'm not going to say something else. And there you go. That galaxy is classified. Check this one out. Another irregular galaxy. Will you be the citizen scientist to classify that one? Please support the channel if you're able. smAsho.org. Let me read you the mission. It's to assist, study, and report on the ongoing formation of a unified theory of physics, to raise awareness of the general public of the relationship between space weather and Earth effects, to connect and consult with media organizations to multiply our reach, to demonstrate cutting-edge proof of concept solutions to problems, to publish scientific papers in a multidisciplinary manner, including but not limited to The science is seen before you. As we don't believe in limits, they are a figment of your imagination. Also, to assist mankind by advancing the study of predictive phenomena, to optimize value and reduce risk and liability and save lives and resources and adapt no matter what the adversity is. Because again, folks, nothing's impossible. Some things are highly improbable. But if you think anything's impossible, expand your mind. Lastly, the mission is to not be ossified in our beliefs and to treat those who are with love, respect, and inclusion to the scientific discussion. As there are a lot of people who refuse to pay attention to the observations, we'd prefer to help them. Please support the channel via Patreon. And thanks to our 10th patron, not to mention the other 9. Now, I want to bring up a quote about cosmology because there was a conversation that happened yesterday between Suspicious Observers and I on Suspicious Observers' video. And let me just read my response. Again, I'm encouraging you to watch Suspicious Observers. However, I don't think there's anybody in current science that agrees with everybody else. So anyway, what I said was there are lots of things in between, and we're talking about in between the sun and Sagittarius A star, which is the core of the Milky Way galaxy. There are lots of things in between, and without giving the entire paper away before it's authored, I'll say this because I like you. We're talking to Ben Davidson here. We're part of the movement you'd like to see come to fruition, and we want to see the real science advance. Now, Ben mentions coincidences often. Now, I ask you, the viewer, do you think it's a coincidence that galaxy Cygnus A is able to transmit a stronger radio signal to Earth from over 500 million light years than any object other than the sun? So anyway, there's a serious discussion going on. I'm trying to get Mr. Davidson and Mr. Bagashov on a 3-way conference call about this because I think there's cosmological potential in that conversation. Anyway, again, I would reiterate the fact that galaxy Cygnus A is the second strongest radio source in the sky, only after the sun, which is not to say Cygnus A itself is the progenitor of the solar system. But it's not to say Cygnus A is not the progenitor of the solar system, and indeed the galaxy. As we know that Z-field columnar jets extend hundreds of millions of light years outside of their source host galaxies. Anyway, one of the papers that's going to be written is involving this extremely large-scale cosmological stuff. And we're not going to reveal any more, but we're going to say, so support the channel. The Patreon tier is $1. There is only one tier, as we're trying to do things like combat our shadow bans. Also, if you want to support the channel via purchasing CBD products, do it through the links in the description below this video. Just click the description box and you'll see the Hemp Lucid Spaced Out campaign designed specifically for our spaced out viewers. Sales going on for whole plant CBD hemp seed oil suspension, as well as isoterp in various different dosages from 250 and 1,000 milligrams. Also the isoterp CBD water soluble, THC-free athlete associated products, 30% off there. A good way to test out THC-free CBDs to see what they do if you've never tried them. Also various other CBD products. So support the channel via the Hemp Lucid Spaced Out campaign if you see fit. Also check out the cycling sponsor, theveloshop.net. The official bike shop of the Lehigh Valley Velodrome, aka T-Town, owned by Becky Quinn. let's show you what it looks like inside the shop on social media. Here was yesterday's exploits.
And then there were two. You know, people think my bike is weird because it's a time trial bike, but it's even weird among time trial bikes because it's got 650C wheels and Black Magic bread. So I only like to shop at bike shops where my clothes match the shop. What say you?
Becky was having no part of saying anything.
Oh no.
She was looking pretty shy.
Yowzers. Sometimes the final climb is more enjoyable than other times. And then there were two.
So I ended up doing an extremely hard ride at the end of yesterday's ride because Brad and I got mysteriously separated in the last 6 miles, and I ended up riding full speed like it was a time trial. Anyway, follow us on social media such as Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You know, facebook.com/smAsho, twitter.com/smAsho. Also on gab.com/smAsho. Also on Minds. Here's our latest video there. You won't see it unless you watch the videos.
Testes. 1, 2, 3.
Anyway, if you don't subscribe, you may never know. Also, the original music is featured in the link to the description. SoundClick and SoundCloud, both their pages there. If you saw the eclipse last night, please leave a comment. Some photos available at spaceweather.com. Let's look at spaceweathernews.com to see the X-ray flux utterly flatlined. Tiny blip there in the A range, nothing to really write home about. As the solar wind ramps up, the magnetometer continues to experience striations. And there is an active region rising, according to what the Gong 2 data looks like. We're going to look at it in 1 minute, but first let's look at the KP, which is at 2. Electron flux is reaching for a leveled out range. We're seeing a tighter range here, higher lows and lower highs in the electron flux. No charging hazards except over southern Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. F2 layer is incredibly discharged on both the nighttime and daytime sides. Check it out. A tiny little spot of 8 megahertz. Densest spot, 7 megahertz. The most layers, you could say. And nighttime side, very discharged. Making for things like cold nights in Antarctica. And let me just reiterate what I said yesterday. It's going to be a cold day in hell when Greenland melts. If you think Greenland's going to melt, please leave a comment and we'll argue and laugh at you. Aurora forecasts are looking what you would expect. We'll look at cosmic rays real quick. Here's a Apatity and Barentsburg. Nothing interesting about that. Let's look at Athens. Athens has had some pretty wild striations in the past several days, and it's still in a large range now. Next, we're going to go to Mexico City. Mexico City sitting right at its 1-week highs in cosmic ray intensity. Next, we'll look at Moscow. Cosmic rays in Moscow have been in a similar range to Athens. I mean, to Mexico City there, and Athens, really. So, large ranges. And lastly, we'll look at Oulu and 2 Antarctican monitors, since most monitors are near the North Pole, not the South. Here's Oulu, Finland. Pretty steady range there over the past week. Here's DOMC, Antarctica. and DOMB Antarctica. Nothing too exciting about any of that. Next, we'll look at the LASCO C2. I'm sorry, the LASCO C3. And we see Venus coming into frame here. Don't worry, folks, it's not a Klingon death weapon. It's not Nibiru. It's just Venus. So it's going to look awesome for the next few days. We'll feature it in higher res for your viewing pleasure. And something's going wrong here. Something's gone terribly wrong, folks. The whole system is breaking down. And when I say system, I mean big tech. Thank goodness, is breaking down. And it's going to stop censoring people pretty soon. We can't wait for that. Here's the Gong 2 data. This is the magnetism of the heliospheric current sheet. As we expect to remain in the South Pole oriented portion, shown in red for quite a while. The active region that we're talking about that is rising is right here. You see those big changes in the lines. So we are expecting to see a rising active region soon, possibly a sunspot. No real predictions for that. Keep in mind, magnetic stuff can change immediately without any currently available warning. And this data is 1 hour, 43 minutes long, old. Again, follow us on social media such as Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Gab and Minds, because we do put occasionally exclusive content, or you won't be able to see it other places. And I'm getting pissed because another web page has taken control. All right, here we go. Also, please like and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't done so, as we view Google as an insect to be stomped on and crushed, not as a giant behemoth to be frightened of. So please help us to stomp on Google with its nonsense by subscribing to this channel, since we knock Google every single day because they deserve it. What do we have here? Looks like an earthquake at Pahala. Hala, if you know where Pahala is. Quite a bit away from Kilauea there. Not near any of the new real estate as far as I know. And not under Mauna Loa. So don't freak out. Don't freak out. Everything will be okay, folks, eventually. Let's do 24 hours of earthquakes as quickly as possible. Here's a 4.6 in Kyrgyzstan. A 4.5 at the Fiji Islands. Check it out. That one's at 532 kilometers. Depth, that is. Kind of out in the ocean there. North of the New Zealand Rift Zone, where we've been seeing large, deep quakes. How about a 4.6 in Japan? 4.5 in Iran. 4.8 in Japan. So 4.7 in Indonesia. You can see the location in blue on the map. Here's a 4.3 in Iran also. Looks like the same location there as the last one. Aftershock. Here's a 4.6 Papua New Guinea. 4.3 Byron, California. That's a new spot, not under the China Lake Naval Weapons Test Facility. But close to Livermore, San Ramon, and Brentwood. Please leave a comment if you felt that quake and you saw your mother-in-law's photograph fall off the wall and smash on the floor. and not mash on the floor. All right, so here's another ridge quake at 4.5 as thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of aftershocks hit California. Here's a 4.5 at Argentina. That one at depth also heads up South America for a larger quake at the surface. Please be an asset, not a liability in the event of a disaster. Here's a 5.6 at Guam. Please leave a comment if you're on a military base there or if you live on Guam, as we are interested in that. Check out the Owen Fracture Zone region. We saw one a couple of days ago there, southeast of Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula. Please leave a comment if you're able to view these videos from the Far East, Middle East, or any place besides the US. How about a 4.7 in Indonesia? And we have a 4.7 Viscoy Island. South Sandwich Islands, very far south. .4 near Coso Junction, California. That one right next to the Naval Air Weapons Center at China Lake. And I've lost my place. Anyway, I'm going to scroll up the list. If you want to look at these yourself, check out earthquake.usgs.gov/earthquakes/map, a catchy URL. I'm going to scroll up the list so that you at least have it on your screen. .3 Argentina, 5.6 Guam, 4.7 Owen Fracture Zone. All right, and we are repeating things now. I apologize. So we see a 5.2 at Fiji. We see a 4.9 Mexico. We see a 4.8 at Japan. And let's move on before we get old and gray and get bored with reporting earthquakes, which are at about 3 times normal background levels. Here's the pressure maps. We see a large anticyclone in the Central Pacific, north of Hawaii, as well as an anomalous area right over here where we see the pressure gradients moving backwards. Also a strong low off of Central Eastern South America and south of Iceland. I don't know why it keeps doing that with the whatever, the trying to find my location, which it can't do because we don't divulge that information. Volcano rundown. Here's Karimsky. Still exploding. Still producing an 8,000 foot ash plume. Sanjiang, Api, 8,000 foot ash plume there. Popocatépetl, volcanic ash not observed. And Sabancaya still exploding. Probably one of the more active volcanoes in the world there. Sabancaya producing a 27,000 foot ash plume. Please don't pole vault Sabancaya. It end badly. Heavy lightning in South Dakota. Check out lightningmaps.org if you hear thunder above your head or down the street. We're not going to zoom in on that. We will show you the water vapor map. Let me get the full Monty. Thanks again, everybody leaving comments. I will attempt to get through them momentarily. All right, here's 50 frames of the full map. I'll allow that to play for 1 minute before I zoom out and back in. Gotta start using my shift key more, folks. My shift key. All right. Keyboard shortcuts are your friend, if you weren't aware. Lucy Fur asks if I've heard of X points, the quote portals, end quote, that instantly transport particles from Earth-Sun connection some miles. No, I haven't heard of that. Ah, you're referring to the story about the flight turbulence. I was going to cover that today. Thanks for reminding me. Maybe we'll make another video about that. We're not prepared to cover that right now, but yeah, there was some interesting flight turbulence. I think solar minimums absolutely have an effect on that as they create massive pressure gradients. So when you have a massive pressure gradient, as we have right now over the South Dakota, Nebraska border, that convergence zone you see there, you're also going to have massive wind shear. Any place from 100 feet off the ground up to 30,000 feet. In fact, up to about 45,000 feet. So yeah, solar minimums absolutely have an effect on it. When you have convective processes causing air columns to move up and down instead of west to east, absolutely solar minimums affect flight turbulence. In fact, I'm so good at predicting the weather, the last time my mom flew back down to Florida, I told her she was going to experience flight turbulence. And let's just say she didn't enjoy the flight. Not trying to brag, folks. I learned how to predict the weather in that detail because of bike racing. I've done bike rides where I predicted the weather on the other side of the mountain to be sunny and on my side of the mountain to be cloudy and rainy. So I've actually crossed the mountain to avoid rain, did the whole ride on dry roads, got back home after the roads had dried. Lucy, you are absolutely correct on Boeing not training the pilots. Boeing not only did not inform the pilots, Boeing didn't inform the airlines. So the airlines and the pilots did not know. Also, there is some pilot incompetence, as most of this stuff can be figured out if you read flight manuals for the specific planes. We're not going to get into that too much because we don't want this video to be super long. However, I can say that we are looking to put another Ask a Pilot section in one of our videos soon. So look for that coming up in the near future. I apologize for the dead air, folks. Trying to get through the comments here. Let's do a zoom in on this this convergence zone. This is an area where you'd have massive wind shear, by the way. You've got cold, dense air and low mass, high humidity air right here, right next to each other. So you're going to have a massive vertical column in that zone, and that combined with the prevailing winds that would prefer to blow west to east is going to cause massive wind shear. You know, so if you fly through this area, I mean, you're going to have different flight speed requirements. When you're in this wet air, you have to be at a higher flight speed to maintain altitude than in this dry air. So more protons equals more lift on your plane. More protons here, less protons here. Because moist, hot air is much less massive than cold, dry air. Yeah, the article about the flight hitting severe turbulence is all over the internet. I actually saw that yesterday, and I thought I had it tabbed, but apparently I didn't. Again, maybe I'll make another video today about that, just about the flight situation, as there's some new stuff coming out about Airbus problems too. So we're not going to get into it any more than that. We're just going to move on to that is an ass, and that is a horrifying hole in the ground. I mean, look at this thing. I don't remember where I got this image from, but of course I made the meme myself. If you become a patron on Patreon, you can just download this, as we do not include a link. Let's talk about fiduciary responsibility, such as the
fiduciary
responsibility of companies like Facebook and Twitter and Google and Apple to look out for their shareholders and not for their political viewpoints. Now, since these companies can't break the internet, but the internet can break the companies as it's in the process of doing right now, we're not a huge fan of things like Facebook and Google and Twitter and Apple's censorship. It kind of makes us angry. And this article kind of makes me happy because it exposes things. Let's take a quote from Jordan Peterson. Things get to terrible places, one tiny step at a time. If I encroach on you and I'm sophisticated about it, I'm going to encroach 2 millimeters. I'm going to encroach right to the point that you start to protest. Then I'm going to wait. Then you're going to calm down. Then I'm going to encroach right again to the point that you protest. Then I'm going to stop. Then I'm going to wait. And I'm just going to do that forever. Because, you know, you're going to be back 3 miles from where you started from. And you'll go, how did I get there? Well, that's where you are with big tech, folks. You're going, how did I get here? How am I this censored? How is the internet this broken? Well, it's because of who owns the servers. And predominantly on a worldwide basis, Google owns the servers. Google is transcribing this actual speech. Google is shadow banning our videos. Google is shadow banning search results. Google is trying to affect elections once again for 2020, just like it did in 2016, which is when we started getting vocal about Google. Now, I stopped using Google as a search engine in something like 2012 because I noticed garbage results. So I stopped using it very quickly. Anyway, let me just read you a little clip from this article, which is listed in the links in the description. I want to read you a little quote from here, as you may find it interesting to know that Twitter has some issues. Let's read you some of the issues that Twitter has. A Twitter public policy director who owned the 2016 election and both party conventions previously worked for Senator Wyden, Democrat, Senator Higgins, Democrat, Bill Foster's congressional campaign, Democrat, Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat. Before that, NBC News political desk. Another Twitter public policy employee was Obama's director for Syria after working in Hillary's State Department. Twitter's public policy fellow is a Democrat who came to the company after losing his own run for Washington House District 14B. Twitter's Associate General Counsel, Global Policy, was formerly advisor to Senator Claire McCaskill after being Associate Counsel to President Obama. Twitter's head of site policy was an intern at the William J. Clinton Foundation where she, quote, wrote letters on behalf of President Clinton to heads of state, end quote. Twitter's vice president of global public policy worked for a Democrat congressman for 20 years. The Washington Post called him one of the most influential tech policy operatives you've ever heard of. To quote Bob Dylan, from the perspective of big tech's got the power. They're the new government. You just don't know it yet. Fortunately, that's all starting to change due to articles like this and channels like ours. Let me play a clip from yesterday's maneuvers talking to slimy Google attorney, I believe it was. I think that's the wrong one. Let's play this one. I thought I had it queued up for you folks, but we're missing something here. Anyway, Senator Ted Cruz held a committee on Google and censorship and stated that he was accomplishing something very interesting, being even less candid than Mark Zuckerberg. Let's play a clip from the exchange between Senator Cruz and Google's attorney, Karan Bhatia.
Break it down, the average
banner ad rate for the Trump campaign was X, and the average, if there are three different types of ads, break it down in whatever category, but compare apples to apples.
And if I could also, Senator, we do have all of the advertising spending for all members on our website.
Now, what I'm waiting for here is when he gives a breakdown of the high-level executives at Google and their political contributions. So we're just going to mute this gentleman for a moment.
Possibly think that Google was discriminating against conservative views. The senior leadership at Google, does it lean left or does it lean right?
Senator, senior leadership, that the whole team consists of people from a variety of different perspectives, from outside of the United States, from America.
Mr. Bache, you're doing something rather remarkable, which is you're managing to be less candid than Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh, busted! He's managing to be less candid than Mark Zuckerberg.
Mr. Zuckerberg, when he testified before this committee, admitted Silicon Valley is overwhelmingly liberal, and anyone operating in the realm of simple reality would acknowledge that.
Now, our Google representative here cites the fact over and over and over again that Google has over 100,000 employees worldwide. Let's continue.
Would you agree with that?
Senator, I go back to 100,000 people, 70, 80 different countries, leadership teams pulled from all over the world. I don't think it's a matter of easy caricature. The days when we were just a Silicon Valley
let's
company.
focus on some simple data. It's where data is helpful. I did an FEC analysis in 2016 of senior executives at Google, people who had the title of some form of executive.
Now, he's talking about a Federal Election Commission investigation because he wanted to see who contributed to what political campaigns. So please continue, and thanks, Senator Cruz.
Vice president or director. Found at least 88 unique senior officials at Google who made contributions to the Hillary Clinton campaign. 88. Do you know how many?
I invite our viewers to guess how many high-level executives at Google made contributions to the Trump campaign.
Your executives at Google made contributions to the Trump campaign?
Senator, it's not my business to look into that.
Care to field a guess? 0.
Anyway, links to this video also in the description below this video. Let's go back to cosmology. Let's go back to real science again. Since Google is a non-science, anti-science company who is attempting to shut down various discussions, dear Google, comma, screw you, period, transcribe that, period. Links in the description to this article also on the new Hubble constant measurement adds to mystery of universe's expansion rate. Another fundamental way astrophysics is being rewritten, or in this case, not being rewritten correctly, due to things like misunderstandings of variability of stars and redshift. Links in the description. Please read the article and don't lose an IQ point over it. Gaia makes first direct measurement of galactic bar in Milky Way galaxy. You ever hear of a Milky Way bar? Well, it's not named after the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way bar by Mars is actually named after the malted milkshake. Anyway, it's fairly obvious that the Milky Way galaxy has a bar, and a lot of folks have believed this for a long time. So please read the article about it, as this is kind of like an artist rendition where the sun is shown here just as a reference point. And yeah, I'm not gonna talk any more cosmology about why this is what's really happening. But we'll just leave it there. Just read the article. We have the links for this article via SciTech Daily, but it is all over the internet. As folks are looking at red giants and they're mapping out the bar, and that's a good thing. So now I'd play this for you, but it is totally uninteresting. But read the article anyway if you're into stuff like galactic scale cosmology. Again, links in the description. Now, Gaia making some interesting observations and prompting astronomers to come up with some ridiculous theories. Now, since mainstream astronomy does not believe that all stars are variable stars, and they're utterly incorrect about that, since all stars are variable stars, some are stable for extended periods of time because of the environment in which they are located. But in any case, all stars are variable stars, and this particular supernova observation caused folks to come up with an even more ridiculous idea than the previous ridiculous idea about, I believe it's type 1As, type 1A supernovae. So check this out. This is Neil deGrasse Tyson probably agrees with this theory. A white dwarf explodes into a specific type of supernova, a 1A, after gathering mass from a nearby companion star and growing too big to remain stable. Astronomers believe, incorrectly. But if that is true, then the expansion should, astronomers have theorized, leave behind trace elements of hydrogen, a crucial building block of stars and the entire universe. That is correct. While white dwarf stars, by their nature, have already burned through their own hydrogen, so would not be a source of hydrogen in a supernova. In other words, what they've done is they've said, oh, this must have been caused by a binary. Oh, we found hydrogen. It must be done by a trinary. I swear, I'm not kidding. Check it out. Based on the light curve, the most likely thing that happened, we think, because we have no clue about cosmology, is that the hydrogen might be coming from a third star in the system. So the prevailing scenario, at least at Ohio State right now, is that the way to make a type 1A supernova is by having two white dwarf stars interacting, colliding even, but also having a third star that provides the hydrogen. Talk about cartoonish science. Good Lord. How about take observations and come up with theories? Geez. Links to this article. Again, please don't lose an IQ point by reading this complete crap about how mainstream astronomy does not understand cosmology in the slightest. And it's sad, especially considering the millions and millions of dollars allocated. Let's look at some transients. Such as the core of the Milky Way galaxy. Here's Sagittarius A star's transients. And we do see a recent little uptick in the X-ray density. Check out the blue image here. We're looking at around days 195 through present, a little uptick in density there, a little uptick between 185 and 190, a little uptick around day 180. Let's also look at another inside the galaxy object, Cygnus X1, largely believed to be a, quote, black hole, end quote. Here are the transients there. And nothing too corollary associated with Cygnus X1, right? Let's look at Cygnus X3, also known as Deneb, the celestial North Pole at the, quote, other end of the precessional cycle, end quote. There are the transients from Deneb, aka Cygnus X3, a blazar, which we are looking down the Z field of. So if you're not familiar with Z fields, those are the fields that come out like a cone out of the poles of plasmoids, objects that are magnets, spherical magnets with toroidal fields. They have a thing called a Z field, like the Earth and like the Sun. Now this thing, some people call a blazar, some people call a high mass X-ray binary. We're looking down the Z field of this thing. And that's why it's so difficult to determine the distance. Anyway, it is inside the Milky Way galaxy, apparently. There are the transients of Cygnus X3. one of the more, let's say, important stars in the sky. Lastly, let's look at Cygnus A, massive radio galaxy, and the second strongest radio source in the sky. There are the transients from Cygnus A, catchily titled 3C405.0. Let's look at one other object. How about one of the Hercules objects? And I'm failing here. Let's look at the Vela pulsar. Here's the Vela pulsar. If you'd like to check this stuff out yourself, if you have a favorite weird object in the universe, it may be shown here at the Neil Gorell's Swift Observatory. Don't believe what I say. Do your own research. Here's an image of the monthly sunspot solar cycles via solon.info. And there is no link provided in the description for this. Keep in mind, sunspot number is not the only measure of solar activity by any means. And thanks for tuning into the stream. Since we have such a boring sun, we're going to show you 10 hours and 15 minutes of colorized magnetogram to show you that there is very little happening. A bunch of mixed magnetic fields there. There is an active region rising. I believe due to the Gong 2 data, we're not going to look into it any more than that by looking at stuff like stereo A imagery. And let me just scroll through the comments so that everybody can see them. I'm not even going to attempt to answer them because there are too many and the video is getting too long. Anyway, thanks again for tuning in, folks. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're a new viewer. And remember, while you're staring at the sun, don't drink. But if you drink, stare at the sun anyway. Use the proper instruments like the SDO or a solar filter, and don't drive. And remember, since it'll never be now again, may the solar wind be at your back and the atherosclerosis absent from your veins. Thanks again for leaving comments, folks. Milky Way Galaxy team for the win.